Yeah, I'm going.
It's not working.
It's live. Hi, we are live now. Um, Hello, hi everybody. Welcome. Good evening. My name is Sunil Dasgupta. I am a parent of 3 MCPS students and a college professor in Montgomery County. I am also a candidate for the Board of Education election in November 2020. Today, we are going to talk about reading and dyslexia. We've been doing these parent-teacher chats on Thursday nights for a bunch of weeks now. And the idea is to have a conversation that helps us understand what the issues are and gives parents and families, as well as teachers and staff, an ability to sort of get into some meaty questions that about the issue. So today we are very lucky to have with us Kelly O'Keefe. And Kelly O'Keefe is um, is an advocate for struggling readers, including those that have dyslexia. She lives with 2 kids in Tacoma Park, and her children go to MCPS. I will let Kelly add more if she wants to. Um, as Kelly, do you want to add something else?
I just want to say thanks for having us, Sunil, tonight to discuss this topic. Like Sunil said, I do have 2 children. I have 2 daughters, a 9th grader and a 7th grader, both of whom are dyslexic. And I also, the way I got into this work was through their dyslexia. And I helped to co-lead an organization called Decoding Dyslexia in Montgomery County. But I am here in my role as a parent tonight.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yep.
Really appreciate it. Next, I'm going to introduce Taryn Carpenter, who is a junior in MCPS. Taryn, you want to add something about yourself?
I have dyslexia, and I'm happy to be here.
Well, thank you for making the time. I know everybody is busy. You're taking time off your homework and all of that, so really appreciate it. And Taryn's mom is Terry Wambach. Terry, you want to say a few words about yourself?
I'm Taryn's mother, and I've been fighting. I think we need to turn our volume down. We're both in the house together. And so I've been fighting a while, years since Taryn's been in 3rd grade, with the school system, trying to find a school that can actually teach her as a dyslexic. And we haven't found that. So I'm just trying to, with all the things that I learned, I'm just trying to share with other parents.
Thank you very much. That's why this is so important. We have to learn about what we did wrong, and we have to learn about what we did right and move forward. And lastly, we have Katie Morris. Katie Morris is a colleague of mine, actually, and she is a MCPS parent as well. Katie, you want to say a little bit more?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Sunil, for having us. And I do have a 9th grader and a 4th grader, boys. It's my, 4th grade. We're now in 5th grade. 5th grade boy who has dyslexia. And we kind of, I am a social worker, and I think that really helped me figure out how important advocacy is in this. And so I got connected with the Decoding Dyslexia. So tremendous thanks to both Kelly and Terry, because I've been following their emails for a long time now, which has really helped me as a parent kind of guide me through the process. I just didn't know their faces before tonight, so.
Wow. And if you are listening to us on Facebook Live and you have questions, please post them. I will be monitoring your questions and we will try and get to them. Please share out this feed if you want to have a watch party. We will certainly as well post the recording of this when we are done. Okay, so let's get into it. So school started. Taryn, how is it going? How are you doing?
Well, for me, one-to-one works really well with the schooling, so that's really helping me. It's still kind of hard though to keep on task with everything. So my mom kind of sits there with me to make sure that I get the help that I need, like with like keeping track of everything, because it's hard for me to like focus and like taking information. So that helps. And reading, writing, spelling, that I really lack in. I kind of like have an elementary level in that. So she helps me type and read stuff for me. Same with the teachers, they'll help me read things for me and kind of like lessen the workload for me. But other than that, I'm doing pretty well with my work and keeping on top of things so far.
So how does one-on-one work in a virtual environment?
In a virtual environment, it's kind of like the teacher is just me and the teacher on the Zoom. So instead of having like a whole class, like with 20 some kids on one Zoom, right. It's just me and the teacher.
And how long does this last in a day? I mean, is this 4 hours, 5 hours? How long do you get the teacher to yourself?
For one teacher, it can last up to an hour. And then like we'll take a break and we'll switch to a different teacher.
And how many hours of live instructions do you get?
I think 4 hours.
4 hours. Oh, good. Excellent. Terry, how does this work for Taryn from your point of view?
Well, I muted me, and Taryn's in the house. Taryn, if you mute me, or your laptop. So we have to put in perspective that Taryn isn't, some of her classes may be through a public school, but the other classes is through IIS, which is Interim Instructional Services. Right. That's how she's getting the one-on-one. There's a teacher with Seneca Valley. She's at Seneca Valley. There's one teacher that spends a lot of extra time with her so that she does get that one-on-one. But Taryn basically is in a different program than a public school. Although she's still with MCPS. So it's right. Called IIS, Interim Instruction Services.
And so I assume that her IEP was adjusted to a individualized distance learning plan, IDLP. Did that happen?
I don't think that acronym is attached to her IEP. Okay. The reason that she's in there is because she has there's always pros and cons, and she has chronic pain syndrome, which she was born with. So she's able to go through the IAS program because of that, and because of being, she used to go to, Taryn used to go to Seneca Valley High School, and she would go with braces on, crutches, braces on her every joint. She would have her ankles wrapped up, her wrist wrapped up, and she had crutches. So she'd go to school with that, looking like a mummy, basically, in pain. And I had to fight for 2 years to get her out of Seneca. I was taking her to school, and the school was calling me like at 10 o'clock because she just couldn't do anymore. She had migraines and she was in severe pain.
Well, I'm glad things got better. Katie, your 5th grader, how's he doing?
I feel like I don't know yet. So we're obviously in week 2. I mean, when I was listening to Taryn talk about how her mom helped her, I mean, last year when we launched online, I know there was a lot of kind of kids had to do the work more independently. And so my husband and I would split the week, and we would pretty much work one-on-one with Ben through the routine. So we'd each take half a day to do that. I think what's hard is we're both working parents, and so we're carving out time to be the teacher, which I also didn't feel confident enough to do, because it takes a lot of patience to sit through all that, and to break it down and to kind of feel like I know what I'm doing, but I'm not doing it the way his teacher does. So anyway, a lot of learning happened last year. This year, it feels like a lot more is happening virtually live. So he's sitting in front of the computer and having to track with the teacher. I'm just not sure yet what's happening, like what he's turning in, what's happening on the back end. I usually try to give at least 2 weeks when the semester starts to just let him kind of figure out his way and then follow up with the teachers. But I think I'm reaching the end of the 2 weeks to be like, hey, how's it going from their perspective? And then doing a lot more tracking with them and finding out from them like how he's doing, because it's hard for me to kind of know, even though he's like in the dining room and I'm down the hall, I still need to kind of almost track to see what's getting submitted, or, you know, what the quality is it's meeting their expectations, things like that.
Are you spending as much time with him now as you were in the spring?
Definitely not. Definitely not. I mean, it was literally 2 to 3 days a week. Like we would split the week, like I said. So I would spend at least 2 to 3 hours one-on-one with him each morning, 2 to 3 mornings a week. And my husband would do the other 2 to 3. So we're not doing that, but we are kind of like walking by the dining room to make sure that he's still with the computer and paying attention, and things like that. So it's definitely better in the sense that, he's more engaged with the teachers. I'm just not sure what the product is yet, because of what he's turning in. Like, I don't know that they're really turning in much yet, so I'm not sure.
And does he seem happy?
Actually, it's really kind of sad. I think he's the first week, I mean, every night he was like, this is awful. I don't like this. He's a really social little creature, and he loves being with his friends. And I think he's really missing that one-on-one contact. He's like, I just stare at this computer screen and they just talk at me. And he's right. That's a lot of what was happening. Definitely the first week. I'm hopeful it'll get better, but it's hard. I mean, I'm teaching online too. It's hard. It's really hard.
All right, thank you for sharing. Kelly, how is it going from your point of view? What are you hearing?
So I have a middle schooler, so I can't speak to the elementary grades. I think that the biggest change, as everyone's noted, is the live instruction. This semester is so much is there. I mean, my middle schooler didn't have any live instruction last year, but the online learning for dyslexic students and kids who are struggling with reading poses a lot of challenges. One is just simple real estate. I'm married to someone who's a film editor who has lots of equipment and also knowledge, because I don't know how to do it. But so both of our kids, or my middle schooler and my high schooler, have 2 screens, and they're constantly opening up one thing to see the teacher in one screen and opening up whatever work is happening on the other. But not all kids are that fortunate. And so these kids have these small Chromebooks. And for dyslexic kids to read and to follow and to move the words from one thing to another, it's a lot for a dyslexic kid or a kid who's a struggling reader to follow that much text and that quickly without the hand gestures of the teacher to point things out and things like that. So those are challenges. And then also, today my 7th grader said, I have science homework. And I was like, you do? What is it? She's like, you have to come down here with me. So we went down there, and the teachers are doing a great job. I feel like with the formatting of the dashboard and the classrooms, and I mean, it's so much better than last year, I have to say. But so the assignment's very clear. It's a science assignment, and she has to learn about the historical, I don't know, I just forgot the word, historical timeline. With the paleo, the Cenozoic and the paleos and all those time frames, all those, I just learned it with her. I just forgot it. But anyway, but it was a lot of reading. I mean, it was really well done, right? She had to click it, it had to open, and then it went through all the different periods, the eons, and then it went through the periods, and it went through the eras, and then the periods, and it was all, the package was fine, but it was just a ton of reading. And for a kid who's dyslexic, all of those tools that they say, well, use the immersive reader. It doesn't always read the web page, right? So I've got a kid who's been online for 4 hours today for school, who's tired, right? She really, really, really does not want to be in front of a screen again. She really doesn't want to do this homework. And then add to it that her reading speed is probably 4 times slower than her peers. And then not only that, she has to read it, absorb the terms, and then transfer those terms to the worksheet while she's typing. So it's going so much better than it was fourth quarter. But to think that we might have 174 days of this left, it just kind of fills me as a parent with a little bit of dread, because it's hard. It's a struggle. It's not easy for her. It's harder. And then of course, all the joy for her, which is the socialization of school, that's missing. And so that's tough,
So can I ask you, Kelly, I'm sure you've thought about this a little bit, what should we change? I mean, what can we change? Considering that it's not safe to go back and bring everybody back, or, I mean, what is your preferred pathway here?
I don't know. I mean, I think that we need to give it more time. I'm also not an educator, but I have a high schooler also. My high schooler takes several advanced classes, and her academics, it's what she's interested in, it's what she wants to do. So in the more advanced classes, I understand that there will be homework, and there should be homework. The kids have the appetite for it. They want to do it. There could be equity issues there. So about access to homework. So I don't know if I should speak to that, but in middle school and lower, I think the kids should be doing as much work in class as they possibly can with the teachers, and not so much homework, because I think it's a lot to get kids to bring them back on. I think it's a lot for kids who have learning challenges, who are so exhausted by the school day anyway, to get back and do homework is really, really hard.
Well, the one thing I was trying to perhaps get you to answer is, would you have preferred that there be some material available asynchronously for her to be able to access at her speed during, and then, the actual live instruction time is more interactive with the teacher?
I would only say that if the asynchronous material were audio, but if it's just like 25 minutes of reading, I don't think there's many kids who are those kind of learners, who read and absorb at the younger ages in particular with enough fidelity to what they're actually be doing week after week to teach themselves a unit. I mean, that's what we did in fourth quarter, and it was.
But you'd be okay audio.
Yeah, I think audio would be better, but to read it herself and to go through it herself, I mean, fourth quarter was awful. It was an unmitigated disaster for my kid. I mean, giving her a PowerPoint saying, read it, do worksheets. It wasn't learning, it was just like doing at least minimum to get a P. That's what we did. I don't know about anybody else, but that's what we did.
Right.
Yeah. So, and I would think we have a challenge in MCPS that we don't often talk about, is that 60% of our kids, 4th grade through 12th grade, do not read at grade level.
That's right.
They don't.
Right.
And if you dig into the percentage of African American kids who don't read at grade level, you're edging up towards mid 60s. And if you go with kids that are Hispanic origin and ethnicity, you're even higher than that. And so what happens is, if you're offering them asynchronous learning, that's all print-based, that's all text-based, you're going to have the majority of kids cannot engage with that curriculum. They won't be able to engage, because when they're in school, they're relying on what's happening in the classroom to absorb that material. They're relying on our teachers. It demonstrates the power of our teachers, right? And the skill of our teachers to impart that wisdom and also the knowledge and excitement of the topic that they have. And if we are going to rely on printed materials for asynchronous learning, I do think it puts a lot of kids at a deficit.
But what about videos? What about, so what about, say, if a teacher says, go watch these 5 Khan Academy videos?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe that would. Yeah.
I think it's hard for some kids to do that, because it's moving back and forth. Taryn can speak to that. It's hard for her to go to one link and then go to another link, or to switch screens and to take notes at the same time while she's watching something using the same machine.
Taryn?
Like when I'm like switching back and forth between everything, I also set up a second monitor to try to help with that.
Yeah.
But not everyone even has access to that second monitor. And like there's so many tabs open and I don't know which tab to close, and I'm asking questions, and then I have to ask teacher because I like forget, like right after I ask the teacher that question, I forget it. I can't think of the name of what that's called, but I forget right after I ask that teacher the question. And I ask that teacher like 3 to 4 times, like, what was that word you just said? So I can search it and open that new tab. And it's like so frustrating. It's also embarrassing. And I can like hear in the teacher's voice that teacher getting frustrated. And they're not trained in Orton, Gillingham. And I feel they'll be like more like compassionate if they were, because they'll like, okay, they had that training and they like know what to expect. But these teachers, like, they don't know what to expect with someone with dyslexia. So they kind of just like get that irritation to that.
Is that true even for teachers that are assigned one-on-one with you?
No, the teachers that are assigned one-on-one, I think they are a little bit more patient. I mean, I had teachers in the past that like weren't, and they like kind of just like quit on me. But the teachers I have now, they are really good. But the ones that have the class going on, for the most part, I have a couple, because it's like 4 teachers. 2 of them, they'll get irritated. The other 2, they're pretty chill about it.
And you said, is this, then you're talking about a class? Are you also part of a class?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you get one-on-one instruction and you're part of the class.
Yes.
And in the class, this is a problem for you to keep following as things are going on.
Yeah.
What do you think may be a solution?
I'm not sure. Okay.
If we are looking at sort of this big problem of reading, Kelly, would you separate dyslexia and reading, the problems of, you talked about 60% having reading below grade level. Not what part of it is dyslexia, what part of it is just not being prepared, and is there a chicken and egg problem, right? So is that if we only give audio material to all those 60%, say, right, then are we saying that those students are not going to get up to grade at some point? Or how do you break that down is essentially what I'm asking.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if I'm necessarily the right person to answer, but I can answer in a few different ways. One is that dyslexia is quite pervasive. Like some people, the statistics aren't as hard and fast as we would like, but it's like, I don't know what are the stats are, like 1 in like 5 out of 20 will have dyslexia. So it's a really, and it's a continuum. There's kids who are more severely dyslexic, like my younger daughter, and then there are kids who are mildly dyslexic, like my older daughter. It's a continuum, but it's a pretty prevalent disability, and it's shocking that even though it's so prevalent, that we don't really deal with it very well in our school system, and most school systems across the United States don't deal well with it. That's number one. But what about all these kids? So if they're not all dyslexic, what's going on? And that's a long answer that I could talk to you all night about. But it goes back to this idea of how do we teach reading to our kids, and how do we teach reading to kids who are K through 3? Because in the year 2000, the National Reading Panel was commissioned to look at how we teach reading. It did a meta-analysis, and it came out to say that structured literacy, or literacy that's taught with a phonics-based approach, a heavy phonics-based approach, is the most successful in teaching our kids to read. It has to be systemic, it has to be multisensory, it has to follow a certain plan, but it will teach the majority of kids to read. But despite that knowledge, we don't use curriculum that supports that. We follow a different way of teaching called whole language that's been around since the 70s. And it doesn't really work that well to teach kids to read. If we were to adopt a structured literacy approach to teaching reading, we would see far, far more students reading at grade level. And some of those kids would still end up being identified as dyslexic and still need additional support. You know, like I'm convinced that my younger daughter would not be reading at grade level if we hadn't paid thousands of dollars for outside tutoring to get her to grade level. And we're only lucky that we had that money because grandparents gave the money from a college fund because it was expensive. It was $25,000 to teach my kid how to read. And she had to do it 3 days a week after school, diligently. We missed vacations. We didn't, I mean, we had holidays, but we always did the tutoring. I mean, it was without fail. And so some kids would end up being like her. They would still need an intervention. But the overwhelming majority of the kids who are not reading at grade level at 6th grade, by 4th grade, pardon me, would learn how to read. So part of it is us, the way we teach reading at MCPS. And that's one of the things that we try to advocate for is for different kinds of trainings to increase teacher skill sets so that they have those skills. And MCPS, I can talk about that too, that MCPS has been training some teachers in Orton, Gillingham, which is a methodology, that's a structured literacy methodology. So kids who are in special education, some students have been lucky enough to receive, you know, intervention from these teachers who have been trained, but we just don't have enough teachers who are trained. And so if we're not going to offer these older students really targeted intervention based on science to bring them up to grade level, they won't catch up. And so then if we're not going to do that, then at least they can have access to grade level materials through audio, through live instruction and through audio. So,
Yeah.
And I will put in the chat if anyone's interested. Emily Hanford is a reporter for American Public Radio or American Public Media, APM reports. She's done these radio documentaries, and she's done 2 that are she's done 4 now, and they're all really interesting. But one explains the science of reading, and the other one discusses how it relates to equity. And I'll put those in the chat because she's done really great work. And she's a resident of Tacoma Park, by the way, or Silver Spring area. We can claim her Montgomery County again.
Yes, of course. What I will do is I'll take that from you and put it in the comments after the in the comments on Facebook after our chat is over.
Oh, okay, super.
Okay. And yeah, so I'll absolutely preserve those. I feel like, you know, in this sort of this structured reading approach, I've read about this, right? I've read about phonics and the importance of phonics. I certainly I learned that way, right? By word, you know, letter by letter, sounding it out. And I taught my kids that way, right? And, you know, consequently, they're actually doing well. So, and you've been advocating for this a lot. Why is this not more prevalent? And do you see other school districts sort of getting ahead by adopting this? What is happening with that?
In the last, I guess I would say 5 to 10 years, there's been a shift and a swing in the United States trying to move away from the whole language, which is the sight words and, you know, the guessing strategies and things like that, and moving more towards structured literacy. And some states and districts have been more successful than others. Mississippi, surprisingly or not, has legislated the hell out of this in requirements in terms of what's required of teacher training and what curriculum must be taught in school. And so they've had really big shifts. There are districts in Ohio and Minnesota and scattered throughout Pennsylvania who have had more success.
Arkansas.
Yeah, there are. Yeah, in Pennsylvania, there's one school district that's doing a pilot and has data, hopefully that's coming out soon, that we can use as a lobbying effort because that district in particular, their population mirrors Montgomery County in some ways in terms of income and diversity. And so therefore that would be really helpful, I think. But yeah, some have been more successful in moving the needle, and others are about where we are. Baltimore County is having quite a bit of success with training their teachers. And St. Mary's too has had quite a bit of success. And also Frederick County. I think those counties I would say are about a half step to a full step ahead of Montgomery County in their using the science of reading to teach literacy.
Why is it more difficult in MCPS?
I'm gonna think about my answer. Does anybody else have Terry, does anyone else have I have to think. I haven't answered.
Okay. We are a big system, so it's not as if, you know, we can turn on a dime. So in a sense, so there is, you know, we have to think about that. I was hoping that Fairfax would have done something, but clearly, you know, you didn't mention Fairfax.
No, Fairfax has done a few things, but I don't follow Virginia as closely. It's only because I'm in Maryland, and I'm a parent, and there's only so much information I can take in and hold in my brain. So I do think Fairfax and Arlington are ahead of us also, but I can't really speak to those. I mean, MCPS is big. I get it, but we have to get over ourselves. We're big. We get it. We know that. I think that I don't know why. I mean, to be really, really frank, I want to see more leadership at senior level. I want the lack of reading and the inability for our kids to learn how to read. I want it to be a house on fire. You know, I mean, we can't send 60 to 70% of our kids of color out of Montgomery County public schools without reading. That's a problem. You know, I want it to be a house on fire. I think it's always, sometimes in MCPS, we just get stuck. We get stuck. And rather than come up with really big, huge, innovative plans, we try to put Band-Aids on things when we really need a huge, innovative plan. You know, and it is a problem. I empathize with MCPS. Our teachers don't always receive the training that they should receive at the university level. So it is a huge, huge issue that teachers may not have the skills that they need to shift in how we teach reading. And so therefore, I really empathize with MCPS because that's hard.
Yeah, and I just want to go to Kelly's point about the Band-Aid, because for those of us on the knowing about dyslexia, like Orton Gillingham is the thing that everybody wants, right? And so to Kelly's point, this whole idea of phonics is built, and that's what's built in with Orton Gillingham too, right? So that idea of teaching kids all this way could bring up the reading level of all the kids, including the ones with the dyslexia, right? And I had also reading, I'm not sure if it was an NPR story, I don't know if it was out of Mississippi or somewhere, where the whole district went that way and they couldn't believe how their reading rates soared, right? So again, we know this is an issue, but I think the Band-Aid is, so now MCPS is training some of their teachers on Orton Gillingham. They offered some trainings, I think last spring, and they got a couple of teachers in there, but they only got a couple, like, so they got 50 teachers in there. We know there's 160,000 kids. Who knows how many special ed teachers, like maybe they got 50 teachers in there. That's not enough to serve the 160,000 kids we got, right? So I think that's the issue. That's the Band-Aid. Oh, we'll just train the special, like what I heard from my school is, oh, we got one teacher to go to that Orton Gillingham training. I'm like, I want that teacher to read with my kid, right? And so I think the thing is like they got just a handful of teachers to do that. Like, how are you getting all the teachers access to what Kelly was just noting, these trainings, so that, you know, especially these K through 4 or K through 5 teachers can be helping these kids with the reading piece. Because I think we need to reinforce it each year. It's not just kindergarten, it's all of elementary school. Because kids are also bouncing in and out of our schools too, right? And so if they miss, you know, kindergarten one school, let's make sure that they get it in, you know, the same reading to get them at a different school at a different grade. So I think that's the Band-Aid, is this Orton Gillingham, but we need to be training more of our teachers on the reading piece.
I have a friend with the teacher. So I do have a friend that told me, she's in decoding dyslexia. And she told me that she sent a letter to the principal of the school because he won't sign off on one of the teachers wanting to take the Orton Gillingham class. And then I hear some teachers, they want to take it, but it's not paid for. They have to go through the principal and has to be accepted. And then Taryn actually has one. So through the IAS, we let them know about we let them know that how severe, and actually the IAS director comes to our IEP meetings. And Taryn, I think you're echoing down there. Sorry. And it's like I'm talking to everybody here and I could just yell at her. But so the director of IAS actually comes to the meeting. So he's aware of how severe Taryn's dyslexia is. And we said that we would like them to find an OG MCPS teacher. She's not teaching reading to Terrin because there is not a curriculum in MCPS to teach reading. But she is working with English. And because she's been trained in OG, she actually is familiar with some of the multisensory techniques that the kids need. And so Terrin is, I think Terrin could probably speak to what how she's working with the OG teacher, which happens to be 6th grade. I think she's 6th grade teacher, and Terrin's past 6th grade, but she's able to teach Terrin English. But I want to emphasize though, MCPS doesn't have a curriculum. So even though the teachers from K to 3rd grade have been trained starting about 2 years ago, Kelly can mention when they started, but they don't have the experience that people who are paying money to say ASDEC, that people at ASDEC had the experience, tons of training. And also the teachers, they don't want to take the 40 hours to get trained by MCPS. In 1 week, it's cramming. And some teachers don't want to use their summer for that, or they feel they can't get out of their classroom for the entire week.
Yeah, they've done training. I just want to just say that, kind of like expand upon what Terry said, is that MCPS has offered this Orton Gillingham training, which is the methodology that is the fundamental methodology to teach for dyslexia. It's a 35-hour training, I think, or 40 hours, what have you. It lasts a week, but it doesn't have. It's a methodology. It doesn't have a curriculum attached to it, like Terry was mentioning. So they also purchased another curriculum called Really Great Reading. Really Great Reading actually hasn't been evaluated, but people do like it. They say that their kids do make progress on it. It's based on structured literacy principles. And so some teachers have been trained in OG and they get the training for how to implement the Really Great Reading. And it's actually a really great combination. Parents seem to be happy with it, but it does end at grade 3, I think. It doesn't go on. So, and MCPS, as far as I know, has trained, like they're in the hundreds last time we talked pre-pandemic for the OG, but they had just started training a handful of middle school teachers in Orton Gillingham. But I'm not aware of what was supposed to accompany that in terms of structured literacy. They have something called Reading 180 or what have you, but those aren't really based on structured literacy. So they're not great accompaniments for the OG. So MCPS has been making those efforts, but like we're saying, when you have 60% of kids who don't read at grade level, the problem is massive, is what Katie was saying earlier, is that the problem is just big, you know what I mean? And the only other thing I want to step back and say is, like, all of us on this call are quite convinced about the role of structured literacy and the importance of it. I will say though that these are things that are called the reading wars, and there's some people who just don't believe it's true. They believe that whole language and the way we teach reading right now is what we're supposed to be doing, and it works. So therefore, right. It's also about education across MCPS, and educating teachers who care a lot. Like, who wants to hear that they don't have the skills to teach these kids to read? I mean, because we have teachers who are so dedicated and who care so much about their kids. And so that's hard. That's a lot of where the divide is too, is that we don't necessarily always have teachers and administrators who think they need to change, who think we need to change.
Right. And so obviously that is the crux of the problem, right? That there are people that believe that system of, the older system of reading, learning how to read, is a better system. And so really it's an intellectual sort of argument that, which works better. And there has to be, hopefully there is evidence placed. So can you tell me how OG starts in kindergarten and goes through 8th grade? No? But no? Maybe I'm misunderstanding.
I personally haven't seen it. I've advocated to get my kid a teacher, or like, he has a reading specialist as part of his IEP. He gets to meet with a reading specialist, and I've advocated to get him one. Like last year, I finally got him one who was OG trained. But to what Kelly was noting, like, there isn't curriculum that aligns with it. So they feel like, okay, I'm trained in it and I know what I'm doing, but like, I don't have the curriculum to do it with him. So it's like, what the hell are you doing? So it feels a little bit frustrating. So I think to your point, like, I don't see that there is the curriculum yet. It's like we're starting to train them on what OG is, but we don't have the mechanism to put it into place in K through anything, as far as what I've seen. But teachers are taking the skills from what they get from the this is my understanding. Right. They're taking the skills that they get from OG and they're understanding, like to what Terrin said, like you need to repeat it again and again and again. And you need to hear the word, and you need to say the word, and you need to read the word, and you need to look at the word, and you need to feel the word, like you need to do all this. And then finally, 50 times later, I feel like he finally figured out what was versus saw was. And we still get those mixed up, right? And then and when still get mixed up in his little brain. So I feel like those teachers are better equipped. So maybe going to what Terrin noted, they're better equipped to kind of work with kids, but I don't know necessarily that they have curriculum. Again, I could be wrong, but that's just our personal experience.
Well, yeah, and I think that's challenging is like when for the K through 2 or K through 3, we just bought this benchmark curriculum, but the benchmark curriculum is a whole language curriculum. So these teachers, the teachers that are lucky enough to get the 30 hours of training, they've been taught like this whole different way, right? About returning to real basics of the sounds and the phonemes in our language and methodically going through them. But that's sort of like learning how to eat an apple and then telling other people you're going to teach them how to eat an orange, right? And so I feel as if our teachers aren't fully supported, we could do more to fully support our teachers for when they learn the OG, then what do they do with it and how do they implement it? Because we hear from teachers that they really like the OG training. They're thankful that MCPS has it. They're really grateful to go. They've learned a lot. And then they get back into their classroom and they think, well, heck, what am I supposed to do with this now? I do think that we could do more to support our teachers in their use of their learnings. Right. And there was just a whole nother RFP that was awarded to the same group that did this training. And we haven't heard enough about it yet. Hopefully there are practicums, meaning follow up with teachers to support teachers in their implementation. Because if we're going to spend all this money to train teachers, we should be tracking outcomes. We should be following how they're implementing it and how they're using it so that we can learn from it, and support the teachers, most important.
Right. So has the community, worked with the people that do universal design for learning? Folks, there are people that do that in MCPS. And I'll give you an example. Like, so my daughter does not hear in one of my daughters does not hear in 1 year, right? And so she has a 504, and as part of that, she gets a sound field in her classroom. But what is amazing about the sound field is that it benefits everybody. And this goes to what Katie was saying, right? If you had a curriculum that benefited everybody, that everybody could learn, right? Then, you could have that sort of broad retraining and rethinking, thinking of it. And I think there are people in MCPS that do universal design for learning, and this is part of it, that you design learning in a way that is universal for everybody. And so and perhaps that's a way to want to push this. I'm curious, the benchmark is recent, right? It's a recent curriculum. We just paid a bunch of money for this, and I'm sure you weighed in on it.
No, I mean, they had a community weigh in at the very end about whether they had just 4 options and they asked which option would be best. But it is a really good question of who was on the RFP committee and who would this goes back to, if you have people who don't believe in structured literacy and don't believe in the science of reading, then they see no reason to include you, right? But if research is 2 decades old, then we should be considering it in our RFP process. We should be making decisions based on science. No, we were not really included in that RFP process. That was the RFP process they started, then they stopped it because they felt like there was a conflict of interest with a potential staff member, potential conflicts of interest with a staff member, which was the right thing to do. But when they restarted it again, no, we were just asked to comment on which one was the best out of the 4. So I don't know who they employed as part of that process, to be honest. I mean, I think MCPS is large, and so there's a lot of different moving parts. There's OSSI, there's curriculum, there's, I don't even know, the folks that you just mentioned. and their special education, there are a lot of folks there. But yeah.
So you all have tutoring for your kids, right? I know Katie said, and Kelly, you said you have tutoring. Terry, Taryn, did you have any tutoring at home? So did when the tutors come, do they use OG?
Yeah, they're using,
What did they say?
they could, whichever, I don't know, Katie, who used, but we used an Aztec tutor, which is the Atlantic Seaboard Dyslexia Education Center. Anyway, but they have developed a curriculum that has been evaluated based on the OG methodology, right? So the OG is a methodology, and then there's different curriculum that can be applied, that apply the OG skills, the OG methodology. And so my daughter used one, it's called Sounds and Syllables. That's what it was called. And it meant 3 days a week. She met with her tutor 3 days a week, you know, so I don't know, Katie.
Katie, how about you?
It sounds like I'm going to need Kelly's tutor. We hired, actually, we got connected with she's a former MCPS. She retired MCPS reading specialist. She was not OG trained, but she had been trained in several of the other methodologies, some of the phonics based programs. And we used her, we've been with her for about 3 years. COVID really put a wrench in that. You know, she is retired, and so a little bit older, and has some health issues. And so due to COVID, we've really had less contact with her, which is another unfortunate thing with everything going on. But yeah, we definitely, again, I think this goes to what Kelly had mentioned earlier, right? And I think what you're seeing here is the hiring of private tutors or parents who are able to take the time to be with their children and do the work, whether it's the homework or the schoolwork or whatever it is, because I think that's just illustrating, I certainly feel the privilege between myself and my husband really supporting our youngest. And so I think that's the thing that, you know, there are some families that are just, you know, when you're working a night job, you know, a nighttime job, you can't do homework with your kid. And when you're working during the day out of the house, you can't be there to help with schoolwork. And so I do think that's why we're seeing the inequities in our communities, that when you can pay for the extra things that your kid needs, then that's where the benefits come. And even the meetings at school, I mean, the advocacy, like this takes a lot of time, and you have to kind of continually go at it. And if you know, don't feel comfortable doing that, it's hard to go into that school and keep asking for it. I know I talked to Terry about this, to keep asking again and again and again. It's intimidating. And so I think there's a lot of parents that maybe don't do that, because it feels like they're in positions of power. And what do I know as the parent? I'm not a teacher, right? So I'm not gonna confront that or advocate, or because I don't know what to do.
Yeah, I'm really sorry to hear that. I am really sorry to hear that if that, to the extent that that is, you know, sort of how things operate, you know, we really have to reconsider where we are. There are a bunch of comments on folks watching on Facebook Live about lack of trust, and can you speak to that issue and what perhaps can be done in order to sort of overcome that lack of trust now? I mean, it's a huge problem.
What do you mean by lack of trust? Can you explain?
So lack of trust in the sense that, you know, the school system says, oh, you know, you don't have this diagnosis, or, you know, for example, you know, Katie's son had a diagnosis. She told us, right, for dyslexia, which is supposed to be extraordinary. And it's hard to get a dyslexia diagnosis. So, you know, where is the issue? I mean, what is holding us up? And how can we improve trust?
I could speak to the dyslexia, the diagnosis for a minute. Kelly could probably finish. Taryn had, she's had now 3 evals through MCPS. And Taryn, you need to turn your laptop down. Thank you. And so she's had the 3 evals, She just had, in the last eval said that she was at 7th grade reading level. She just had an eval that MCPS funded for Taryn because of all the issues that she's going through.
Right.
This eval says that her reading level's at grade, elementary. So from here, the school says that she's at 7. Within a year, she had no reading intervention. She's at elementary, like 4th grade. And I had somebody that I had to show them, she had an eval done. I had to show the psychologist at the school that her first eval when she was in 3rd grade, that it was evident that she has dyslexia. They ended up changing it because I was able to prove it. Even though they couldn't use the word dyslexia, it was evident within that eval that she had it. So it's like, how do I trust when I see it, if I see it and I know that they've seen it, but yet she has another eval, the second eval, and you don't see it? I lose my trust. And plus it's the grade level's going to be different if you go outside and get a private eval. That's right. So I have no trust.
I have heard this from many, many parents, and not just about reading and dyslexia, but overall about special ed, right? That the evals are not done, and if they are, then there is an issue with, then there's an issue with the actual diagnosis, and then what do you do about it? And it's a constant battle. We have a special education office, which is extraordinary. I mean, I think in Montgomery County, is sort of ahead in that sense that we do actually put a lot of resources in special education, but we seem to be losing something. And I'm just trying to figure out, especially as a candidate for the board, how is it that we can break this?
Well, I think that I don't have the actual statistics and I would love to have them again, but I think it's like 60 to 70 or even higher % of special education students are there because of specific learning disability, which is a reading disability. So if we really figured this out, then we would really go far if we addressed our core instruction, our first instruction, and we prevented kids from getting into special education. I think parents lose trust with special education and or with Montgomery County when Montgomery County is satisfied with your child making micro progress.
Yeah.
When your child is in 2nd grade and is not progressing from level, I mean, I know the levels have changed now, my kids are older, but like they would tell me every time, your daughter is almost at level L. You know what? It doesn't matter. She's not progressing. And first of all, she wasn't at level L. She was at like level B. I mean, like the kid couldn't read, I mean, and so telling me she can read isn't going to make me feel better because she can't read. I can tell my kid can't read. And so I think parents lose trust or there's a lack of trust when your child is told just to concentrate more or to read to your child more, or your child made this little progress and isn't that great. It's not great because all of a sudden your child is in 10th grade, right? And, and is still struggling, right, Taryn? I mean, it doesn't feel good. And you are so strong mentally and emotionally to be where you are. And you should be so proud of yourself for doing the work that you're doing right now, because it is so hard when you struggle to read. And so I think there's a lack of trust there, because parents don't want a modicum of progress. They want progress. And MCPS has to do a better job of looking at its data, truly digging down and analyzing the data and figuring out where kids aren't learning to read, why they're not learning to read, and then intervening on that. Okay. And we don't do as good of a job as we can. I will say that Kevin Lowndes, who's the Associate Superintendent for Special Education, Kevin has been trying to work with us at, decoding dyslexia, and with our community. He really has. I give Kevin a lot of credit, but he's only one person, right? You can't move a mountain by himself. But I just did want to do a shout out for special education because they have worked with us. They have met with us. I think they think that we're the biggest pains in their butt they've ever met. And I'm probably not their favorite person in the entire world. But I am thankful for Kevin's role and for his willingness to meet with us.
So you said that it's not enough to have one person, right?
Right.
Who else do you need on your side now?
You know what's a really good question. If I could see the inner workings of MCPS and not feel like I was standing outside of a fortress, you know, I would know more. You would think I would. I've done this advocacy for 4 years in a lot of spare time. I do have a full-time job. And I have to remind myself of that so I don't get fired. But you know, I still don't know. I mean, where are the levers of change? Where are they? You know, it's a really good question. And I would love help in solving that.
So I see this actually manifest across various things.
I bet, you know, that's why I don't, yeah, I bet.
Yeah, the persistence of things, of problems that, you know, need resolution, but nothing gets done. So it's the same reason as we can, you know, come with with a fall plan 5 days before. I mean, before school starts. It's the reason why, you know, school boundaries haven't changed in 30 years. So it's there are some really sort of deep-rooted, persistent issues that need to change. And I'm trying to figure out where the levers lie myself. And you know, I hope we can work together to push forward on these things. Taryn, I want to give, Kelly said this, and I think it's worth reiterating. You are so brave. You are incredible for having sort of pushed through, and the kind of resilience you demonstrate. I wish I had myself, and I wish for my kids. Right. And it's incredible that you decided to come on, and talk publicly about this. So, you know, if you are in a unique position of having these services, and benefiting perhaps not as much as you could. Tell me, I think, tell us, what are the couple of things you would like it to be better now? I mean, you've had I think a little while to think about. I asked you this question before, but I'm trying to see if you have any ideas for us.
I don't know exactly, but things that want to be better, if more teachers can get that Orton Gillingham training, that's the biggest thing that I really want to change, because especially in high school, they're really focusing on elementary school, but they're really just forgetting about those high schoolers. And that's I'm in high school still, and they're just no one cares about the high schoolers right now.
But you do have one-on-one instruction, so.
I do, yeah, I do. But for everyone else, I especially because I really care about everybody else too.
Right. No, of course you do. Of course you care about your friends, right? Mm-hmm. And so, do you see them also having issues with reading and not being able to access the kind of help that you're getting?
Yes.
Taryn, tell them who's your tutor during the day then?
During the day, my mom's helping me. So it's just my friends don't get that. And
so even though Taryn has that, Taryn, even though she has the one-on-one, that's the person that actually shows her how to what homework she needs. And when we talk about dyslexia is not only reading, it's processing and writing.
Correct. So
when Taryn, I'm not working. I haven't worked since 2015 because I'm Taryn's advocate.
Right.
We don't have an extra income. I don't have the funds to pay for somebody to tutor Taryn.
Right.
I am constantly advocating for dyslexia, for the kids who need help of all colors. And Taryn, when Taryn has the school, the classes, I'm there. I'm right next to her. So when she needs writing, I'm writing for her. She gets lost of which tab to go to and to what's happening, because they can't use the multisensory techniques. They don't even know they're doing it some of the time, but they can't use that when they're online. So Taryn, it's very hard for Taryn to retain what she's learning. I sit there so I know what she's working on. And then after, she may have a couple hours with me because I'm interpreting it the way that she can understand it. I'm finding videos because the videos work best. So I'm finding videos to go over what she's doing. I'm her tutor, and I'm there all day. And plus she has maybe 2 hours with me after school. Now the school is pretty long. And even on the day, right? And even on the days that she's not with school, I'm telling her, okay, well, where's your homework? How do we get to where the teachers say your homework is? And where are we finding this homework? And then I got to find the other videos for her to be able to reprocess what that homework was or how to do it and how to turn it in.
And we're trying to email those teachers to figure out where that homework is because we can never find it.
Right. Okay. So a better class organization. Does it help to have one system instead of two, like only Canvas rather than Google Classroom and Canvas? I think that was a big step forward, right? All right. So we don't have that much time left, but I do want to ask you all about the 2020 legislation for sort of reading screening for kids. What is it? What is it supposed to do? Have you heard that it's being done? What, where are we with that?
Yeah, I'm sorry to talk more, but I do know that it was the Dakota Dyslexia State Organization really helped to put it through. It's a screening bill. It requires universal screening starting this year of all kindergartners, and it's pushing. And if kids don't do well, they're supposed to be screened in first grade. But the Maryland State Department of Education is really pushing for the guidance to accompany it to really encourage K through 2 screening. But the idea of the screening is to identify kids who could have reading challenges. So, and it's a developmentally appropriate tool. So it is screening kindergartners basically on sounds, on the beginning sounds of language, and can they identify those sounds? And so I don't know yet how many times a year MCPS will be doing it. If it's going to be done just once in the fall, but twice would be ideal to see if there's progress there. Last year, I'd like to say that I did forget to mention that a year ago, MCPS amended the budget, the Board of Education did, and hired an instructional specialist to focus on dyslexia. Her name's Dr. Council, and she's been a great working person with us. She's in the curriculum side of things, not the special education side of things. And she is taking on a role with this screening and advising on the implementation of the screening. So she's been a great resource. But again, we get to this idea of her just being one person, correct? But yes, the screening is being rolled out for kindergartners, and all kindergartners should be screened. And the idea behind it is that if they identify kids who have reading challenges, that they will receive intervention that is evidence-based and receive a multi-tiered system of intervention of supports that is evidence-based. That's in the legislation too. So, it is supposed to be rolling out. We have not heard a lot from MCPS about it. I understand that MCPS is completely overwhelmed, and we're hoping to learn more about their implementation of it.
Sounds like this is phonics, right? Sounds like they're going to test for phonics.
Right.
Right.
So
and so do you think that might push us toward the direction you want to go?
Yeah, I think it's great. And I think that those advocates that pushed it through, that was their idea, was to really identify kids early so that we can get all kids reading. And the only way you can tell if they're not reading is to really look at the science of reading. What does it tell us how kids learn? Break it down so that the tool is developmentally appropriate for kindergartners and that it's based on that science of reading, right?
And this is great, and that's wonderful. And Kelly does a lot. Then Terrin's high school. So, and I think of the middle schoolers. And
I know, I'm with you.
When is this going to happen for them? And why are they left behind? And why are they, by the time that what Kelly's talking about gets up to high school, these high schoolers are going to be out. Where are they going to be?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you.
And even middle school can be out before they actually move up to help the middle schoolers or even the high schoolers. This is great, but hopefully the kindergarten will be helped with it.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is helping the next generation of kids coming up. So I'm hopeful like kids like my youngest won't, you know what I mean? They'll catch it sooner and that will help. But I think to both Kelly and Terry's point, like this needs to be something that we need to kind of look at and examine, not just K through 2, but where are we in terms of the reading all the way through? I also think, you know, Sunil, with your asking this question, like, I think it's great that this legislation, I was really celebrating when I saw this legislation passed, but it's also going to force MCPS, like, you know, instead of getting caught in the fire, like, let's think now, like, we're doing all this testing. We're going to have to put all these interventions into place. What are we actually going to do about that? And going back to Kelly's point, like, hey, what if we rethink our reading, right? And how we're teaching reading? And what if we did this for everybody? Then I think we would have less need to be pulling all these kids out for interventions if we were just teaching everybody to read with this systematic multisensory phonics program that we know works. Like, let's just do that in every single classroom so we're not having to pull out 10 kids now and teach them, you know, pull them out in a separate room. I mean, how much disruption is that throughout the whole day and everybody's day, and coordinating all of that and hiring the teachers to do it? Let's just teach it across the board to everybody that way.
Yeah, I think, you know, a lot of the world actually teaches phonics reading, as far as I can tell. And well, so this is but it's not a small problem. I mean, what you're at, you know, you're saying that we just bought this curriculum. It's a whole language curriculum, and now you know, we should abandon that. So that's a big decision. I'm hoping that, you know, somebody like Dr. Council is actually, you know, pushing for it, because she is in exactly the position to be able to do that, right? But there are obviously, you know, sort of an entire ship to move, to be moved. If, you know, I hope that I can have these kinds of continue to have these kinds of conversations. I think if nothing else, you know, doing the testing will enable a sense that this is important, and at least in the elementary level, I think we can quickly have a recognition that that phonics reading is important, because they are going to test for it, right? And so we are all driven by the test. So if they are going to test for it, then we probably end up doing that. I think I want to ask, if you were to give advice to a parent who is going through the process now, right, of evaluation or of, you know, sort of figuring out what to do. You all have experience. What would you say?
Definitely don't be afraid to advocate. Don't be afraid to go into your school and talk to the teachers, talk to the principals, talk to the special ed. It's probably going to have to be more than one conversation. I feel like they know me at the elementary school and I feel bad because I'm like, oh, they're like probably regretting when they see me come in. But I do think it's just really important to know that you can be that voice for your kid. And even though, because I think several of the other parents noted this, like, even though they might say, oh, look, you made this progress. Oh, look, like still kind of saying, okay, that's great. And I'm really strength-based as a social worker, love seeing progress, even little steps. But what I'll say to the school is, to my kid, I'll say, that's awesome. Look how much you did, even the baby steps. What I'll say to the school is, still not good enough, still not good enough, still not good enough. And I think that's something that, you know, as a parent, I think you just have to kind of keep at it. And for me, I found definitely seeking out resources and using those, asking questions of other parents, finding out how they did it, because you don't want to reinvent the wheel. And I've learned so much from others who've done it before me.
I'm going to agree with Katie that don't reinvent the wheel. Get connected with Decoding Dyslexia, talk to parents.
Any Spanish language resources?
There's people that speak Spanish that are in Decoding Dyslexia.
Good.
I would say, you know what, that we have really good, dedicated and kind teachers in MCPS. but they don't necessarily know about dyslexia or about the science of reading. And so even though it's scary, you might end up being a person in the room who is your child's advocate, of course, but who also knows more. So I would say to start with Emily Hanford's podcast called At a Loss of Words, and and Sunil will share it.
Yeah.
It explains these two different approaches to teaching reading, and it will help you understand why your kid may not be reading. I think it's a really important place to start because it will make you feel not quite so crazy. You know your kid is smart enough, right? Not every kid's going to be a rocket scientist, but your kid's smart enough. So you know your kid can learn how to read, right? So believe in yourself and believe what you know about your child. And so listen to the podcast, or you can go read a bunch of stuff on the web, but the podcast is just easy. You can listen to it as your grocery shop if you want, with headphones. You can listen to it and learn about what we've been talking about tonight, because it will really help you explain to the school what you want for your child, how you want your child to learn, and what you expect from it. And then the other resource that I put up here is a technical assistance bulletin. It is put out by the Maryland State Department of Education, and it talks about best practices that counties should be following for the identification and intervention of dyslexia. And so it'll give you, something to go forth with and say, hey, this is what I know should be happening. But I just echo what the other folks say is just don't give up. You know your kid. You know your kid is smart enough to learn how to read and to work with MCPS to try to make it happen.
As you talked for this hour and 15 minutes, there were lots and lots of comments on Facebook. And I want to tell you, most of them reiterated what the points that you were making. So I didn't bring them up, but there are a lot of, there's a suggestion here, know the IDEA law, right? It's very important. Know the law itself and what you are, what is due to you and not. And I think joining a group of parents going through this just like you is a very important part of this. I mean, it's almost, it's as important to organize as to push, because if you know what the levers are, how somebody else got something else, then it is something, at least you know how to pursue this. Anyway, thank you very much for taking the time this evening. I hope we have a lot of progress on reading. We make a lot of progress in reading. I hope that phonics is introduced and we go from there. Thank you very much, and I will be posting all of this on YouTube. I'll be posting Kelly's suggestions as well as responding to any comments that they were there. So thanks again.
Thanks,
Thank you
everyone.
so much for having us on and for the conversation.
Oh, sure. Thank you very much. All right.
Thanks, Katie.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.